Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Malice in the Mitten. I'm Tracy Preston.
And I'm Christine Mulligan.
Now, before we begin, I want to take a moment to recognize the person who brought today's story to us. This case came from an anonymous listener in Bay City, Michigan. In fact, the same listener who has continued to remind us that Bay City has stories that still echo. Stories that were printed in black ink on aging newspaper pages, and then, for many people, slowly faded from view. But not for everyone. Not for the families. Not for the children living through it. And not for the people who still remember that behind every old headline has a real person, a real home, and a life that was suddenly interrupted. So, to our anonymous listener in Bay City, thank you, truly. Thank you for trusting us again and for helping us bring another Michigan story back into the light. Before we begin, a content warning.
Before we begin, this episode discusses the disappearance of a young husband and father, the emotional impact on his wife, children, and family, and the long unanswered questions surrounding a missing person case. We will be discussing grief, uncertainty, and the pain of family not knowing what happened to someone they loved. There are no graphic details in this episode, but the subject matter may still be difficult, especially for listeners who have experienced the disappearance or unresolved loss of a loved one.
As always, we will handle this story with care. We are not here to sensationalize Robert Wood's disappearance, and we will not present speculation as fact. We will focus on what was publicly reported, what his family said at the time, and the questions that remained. Please listen with care. Tonight's story begins with a photograph. Not a crime scene photo or mugshot, not an image meant to shock anyone. It's a family photo. A young husband, a young wife, two little girls. Winter coats, smiles, a moment captured before anyone in that picture could have known what was coming. Because when we look at old family photographs after something terrible has happened, they can feel almost impossible to understand. Everyone is still there. Everyone is still whole. The children are small. The future still looks ordinary. And then one day, ordinary ends.
Ordinary ends. It's not like families wake up knowing this is the last normal day. #normal day. They're just living their lives.
Exactly. For the Woods family of Bay City, that last normal day came in January of 1974. His name was Robert A. Woods. He was 27 years old. He lived in Bay City with his wife Carol and their two daughters, Shelly, who was 7, and Kristy, who was 3. By every description in the newspaper coverage from the time, Robert was not a man who had drifted away from responsibility. He was not portrayed as someone looking to disappear. He was a husband, a father, a worker, and a man with plans. He was a tool and die worker and had mechanical interests. He ran a small engine repair shop in his spare time and tinkered with cars and snowmobiles. He was involved in the Masonic community and had become a Mason and Shriner. Now, according to the article, just the week before he disappeared, he had worked at the Shrine Circus in Saginaw and bought things for children because he felt sorry for them. Now, this background gives us a glimpse of the man behind the headline. Robert Woods was not just a missing man. He was someone's son, husband, and father. Someone who fixed things. Someone who got pleasure from helping others. Someone who had a place in his community and, according to the people who loved him, he had no reason to walk away. On January 24th, 1974, Robert Woods was at home at 321 Fraser in Bay City. He put on an old pair of jeans, a plaid shirt, and a greasy parka. And those details feel small, but they are the kind of details families remember because they become part of the last image, the last outfit, the last version of someone before the door closed. Robert left the house to wash his new 1974 automobile before going to work at 3 p.m. That was the plan. Wash the car, get ready for work, come home later like any other day. But Robert never returned. And at first, the worry came in stages. His wife Carol knew his routine. She knew when he should have been back. She knew he was supposed to go to work. And when he did not return in time, something felt wrong. But she did not call the police until around 2 a.m. on January 25th. And I want to pause there, because that does not mean she was unconcerned. It means she was doing what so many people do in those first terrifying hours, trying to explain the unexplainable in normal ways. Maybe he got delayed. Maybe he stopped somewhere. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe he would walk in at any moment. Families often do that in the beginning. They wait because panic feels too big to name. They wait because once you call the police, that fear becomes reality.
And especially in 1974, people didn't have the same instant way to check in on someone. No cell phones, no tracking, no Life 360, no quick text saying, "Where are you?"
That's exactly right. In 1974, when someone vanished between one location and the next, there was just silence. And silence could stretch for hours before anyone knew what it meant. The police were eventually brought into the case through a brother-in-law of Robert's who was a state trooper at a nearby post. And then the search began to take shape around the last known pieces of Robert's day. Now, according to the article, Robert had last been seen leaving City Auto Parts at 2001 Broadway with a friend. His car was later found parked on a side street near the store, and that right there immediately raised questions. You see, Carol did not believe Robert would have left his car there. His vehicle was left in a no parking zone when police called Carol to pick it up. And to Carol, that did not fit the man she knew. Robert was proud of that car. He had just bought it. And she said she did not think he would have left it in a no parking zone. Now, even more concerning, she said the car had been parked in a different place from where Robert had last been seen by employees at the parts store. Now, that detail does not tell us what happened, but it does tell us why Carol was scared. Because sometimes it's the smallest things that are the loudest. A car parked wrong, a paycheck never picked up, a man who always called if he stopped for a drink after work. And this time, there was no call home. Carol told the newspaper Robert was not much of a drinker. Socially, yes, but according to her, if he stopped after work, he would always call. That was his pattern. That was what she knew. And now, his pattern was broken. Robert had about $50 on him at the time he disappeared. He was also supposed to pick up 2 checks from work, but those checks later arrived in the mail. The money in their credit union had not been touched, and according to both his wife and his mother, There was no known reason for Robert to leave home. Carol and Robert had been married for 8 years at this point. They had attended Central High School together. They had known each other since they were about 12 years old. Their marriage, according to Carol, had been relatively calm. They were buying their part of the duplex they lived in. They were looking forward to a motorcycle trip to northern Michigan that upcoming spring. And those plans are important because plans are evidence of attachment. Not proof of anything, but a sign that Robert's life was still moving forward. A home, a wife, 2 daughters, work, a new car, a spring trip, and then nothing? No arrival at work, no call, no explanation, no father walking back through the door. And in the middle of that silence was a 7-year-old Shelly. Carol said Shelly's questions were the hardest to answer because she was the oldest out of the 2 girls and she knew what was going on. It was reported that Shelly cried all the time over her missing father. She would not eat and kept asking where her father was. And that is where this story becomes more than a disappearance. Because when a person vanishes, they do not vanish from one life. They vanish from the dinner table, bedtime, birthdays, from the passenger seat, family photographs, and from every ordinary moment where they are supposed to be standing. For Carol Woods, the newspaper captured her sitting with old snapshots from happier times. For Shelly and Kristy, it captured something even more painful. Childhood interrupted by a question no child should have to ask. Where's my dad? But no one had an answer. When Robert Woods left his home on Fraser Street that January day, the plan was simple enough that no one would have thought to question it. He was going to wash his car. Then he was going to get ready for work, and he was expected at General Motors' Saginaw manufacturing plant for his 3 p.m. shift. That was the ordinary chain of events. Car wash, work, home. Robert had made it to the auto parts store. He had been seen there. He was not simply gone from the moment he left home. He was out in the world, running a couple of errands. And that makes what happened next even more unsettling, because his car was later found near the auto parts store, but not quite where it should have been. Carol told the newspaper that Robert's car had been parked in a different place from where employees at the parts store said they last saw it. That is a small sentence with a very big shadow, because it suggests movement. The car was seen in one place, later found in another. And the question becomes, who moved it? Was it Robert? Was it someone else? Was there a simple explanation that never made it into print? Or was that shift in location one of the first signs that something was wrong? And we must be careful here because we do not know. But Carol noticed, and Carol knew Robert. She knew his habits, his routines, and she knew what fit him and what did not. And the way the car was left, that didn't fit.
I guess this is an important piece because sometimes a spouse notices what police or outsiders may not notice. It's not just a car was parked somewhere. It's he would have not done that is really what she's saying.
Right. And that's exactly why Carol's reaction matters so much in this story. By the time police called Carol to pick up Robert's car, it was reportedly parked in a no parking zone, and that really bothered her. Not because people never park illegally, not because one parking violation proves anything, but because Robert had just bought that car and was proud of it. Carol said she did not think he would have left that sitting in a no parking zone where it could have possibly been towed. And that detail tells us something about Robert. This was not just transportation. This was something he cared about. He tinkered with vehicles. He worked with his hands. He ran a small engine repair shop in his spare time. Cars and mechanics were part of who he was. So, if Robert was proud of that new 1974 car, Carol's instinct was that he would not casually abandon it somewhere where it could be ticketed, towed, damaged, or noticed for the wrong reason. And that is where the story starts to narrow. Because now we are not only asking where Robert went, we are asking why his car was left behind, why there was no call, why he never made it to work, why he did not pick up the checks he was expecting, why the money in the credit union remained untouched, and why no one who loved him could point to a reason he would leave. Now, there is another detail in the article that feels quiet at first, but grows louder the longer you sit with it. Robert only had about $50 on him. He was scheduled to pick up 2 checks from work, but he didn't. So, if Robert had intended to leave voluntarily, he did not appear to take the obvious money available to him. Again, that does not prove what happened, but it is something to take notice of. People can leave suddenly and make decisions no one expects. But when someone disappears without touching shared funds, without collecting expected pay, without taking steps that would make leaving easier, investigators must ask whether the person truly left by choice. And Carol and Robert's mother was asking that too. The newspaper reported that neither his wife or his mother could cite any reason Robert would leave home. His mother described him as a happy-go-lucky person. Carol described their married life as relatively calm. They were buying into the duplex where they lived. They had plans. And in a missing person case, plans matter. Plans do not guarantee safety or someone's state of mind, but plans do give context. Robert was not described as a man standing on the edge of a life he was trying to escape. He was described as a young father who had a home, a family, a job, a new car, community ties, and a spring trip to northern Michigan on the horizon. The motorcycle trip is one of those details that stings because it's so normal. It is future tense. It says, when the weather changes, we're getting out of here. When winter breaks, we have something to look forward to. When spring comes, life will still be here. But Robert didn't make it to spring.
It gives you chills because those little future plans are what make someone feel present. He wasn't just existing, he was looking ahead. So to just disappear like that.
Yeah, none of it makes any sense. And that is part of what made his disappearance so hard for his family to understand. There was no dramatic goodbye, no known confession of fear, no clear reason, at least from the article, that Robert chose to vanish from his wife and daughters. Instead, there was just a car. A car parked where Carol did not think her husband would have left it. A missed shift, 2 checks that arrived later in the mail, money that was untouched, and a family waiting for a door to open. And one of the most haunting parts of this story is how narrow the known timeline feels. Robert leaves home. He's seen at City Auto Parts. His car is later found. And then there is the empty space. This empty space where families suffer. Because when someone is murdered, as horrific as that is, there may eventually be a known ending. A cause, a place, a person responsible. But in a disappearance, the mind is forced to keep searching. Every knock could be news. Every phone call could be him. Every rumor could become hope. Every silence becomes something to interpret. And in 1974, that silence would have been heavier than it is today, because there were no cell phone records, no location pings, no security cameras covering every gas station, parking lot, doorway, or intersection, no social media posts to track someone's last contact, and no digital trail moving quietly behind the person. Investigators and families had to rely on witnesses, routines, phone calls, paper records, and physical evidence, and memory. And memory, as we know, is fragile. It fades. It shifts. It can be sincere and still incomplete. So when we look back at Robert's disappearance now, what we have are fragments. But the fragments are not meaningless. They tell us what mattered to the people closest to him. Carol was not only worried that Robert was gone, she was worried because the details did not match her husband. And when enough things do not match, concern becomes something sharper. It becomes fear.
Yeah, and at first, you're hoping there's a normal explanation. But then every detail starts pushing against that hope.
And for Carol Woods, those details were piling up quickly. Robert's disappearance also came with another layer of urgency because of his daughters. Shelly was old enough to understand something was wrong, but Kristy was just too young. And Carol was caught between being a wife who needed answers and a mother who had to help her children survive the uncertainty. And that is an impossible position. Because how do you explain disappearance to your children? How do you answer where daddy is when you don't know? How do you keep a home standing when one of the people who held it together is simply gone? Carol told the newspaper that Shelly kept asking questions about where her father was. That is the emotional truth at the center of this case, not the mystery alone or the unanswered questions, but the people left behind living inside those questions. And that is why we cannot treat Robert Woods like an old headline, because he was more than the mystery of where he went. He was the father whose daughters were waiting, the husband whose wife was picking up a car she believed he never would have left that way. He was the son whose mother could not explain why he would leave. He was the worker who did not show up, the man who had plans for spring. And then, after January 24th, 1974, those plans stopped. What remains is the puzzle of that day. The errands, the auto parts store, the friend, the side street, the car, the checks, the silence, and the question that still sits at the center of it all. What happened to Robert Woods after he left City Auto Parts? In missing person cases, the public often meets someone at the moment they are gone. A name, an age, a last seen location, a description of clothing, a vehicle, a date, and all of that matters. But it is not the whole person. Robert was not born into this story on January 24th, 1974. He had a life before that day. He had people who knew the sound of his voice, the rhythm of his footsteps, the way he came home from work, the things he cared about, the places he belonged. And when those people spoke to the newspaper after he disappeared, they were not describing a stranger. They were describing someone whose absence had left a shape in every room. Robert and Carol had known each other since they were just kids. And when someone has known you since childhood, they have watched you grow through different versions of yourself. They know the younger you, the awkward years, the teenage years, the person you became when you started working, married, built a home, became a parent. Carol was not simply a wife trying to explain a husband's behavior from a distance. She had a lifetime of history with this guy. They attended Central High School together. They'd been married for 8 years. They had 2 daughters together. And by the time Robert vanished, they were not just sharing a life, they were building one. Their relationship had roots. This was not described as a family in transition or a man drifting without direction. This was a young couple working toward ownership, stability, toward a future that felt reachable, and the motorcycle trip planned in the spring.
Yeah, that detail makes it feel relatable. They weren't talking about some far-off dream. They had couple plans. Spring comes, you take the bike north. You breathe a little.
Exactly. And those normal plans are part of why his family struggled to understand the idea that Robert would have chosen to walk away. And maybe that is why the location of his last known sighting stands out even more. City Auto Parts was not random in the way a grocery store or a street corner might have been random. It fit the life being described. A man who loved mechanics and repairing engines. He cared about cars. He had a new car that he was proud of. All that feels ordinary until it doesn't. And that is one of the cruelest things about this case. The known pieces do not begin with chaos. They begin with routine. A family waiting at home. Then suddenly, the routine doesn't hold. In missing persons cases, we must leave room for possibilities without turning possibilities into claims. We do not know whether Robert met with foul play, if there was an accident. Did someone have information that never became public? Did investigators have leads that were never printed? What we know from this article is what the family saw, and what they saw frightened them.
We may not know what happened, but the people closest to him knew enough to be scared, knew enough to think he didn't just walk away from his life and leave his car where he would have never left it. But is that all we know?
That is all that's out there.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And that fear was not built on one single detail. It was built on everything that wasn't adding up. There was also Robert's involvement with the Masons and Shriners. Now, the article says he had become a Mason and Shriner at the Madison Avenue Masonic Temple relatively recently at this point. Just the week before he had vanished, he had worked at the Shrine Circus in Saginaw. Now, that places Robert in a room full of noise and movement and children and spectacle. A circus? A community event? Something bright and public? And then less than a week later, his own children were sitting in the quiet after he disappeared. That's a contrast. The man who had compassion for children at a circus was now missing from his own daughters' lives. Kristy was young enough that memory may have become fragile over the years. Images, stories, pieces passed down, maybe feelings more than full scenes. But Shelly was old enough to understand that her dad was gone. There is no gentle way to say, I don't know where your father is, or when he'll be coming home. No way to make a child's world feel safe when the adults do not know what happened. And every year that passed without answers would have changed the shape of that burden. At first, the question is immediate. Where is he? Then it becomes desperate. Why has no one found him? Then over time, it becomes something heavier and quieter. Will we ever know? And for children, especially, the unanswered question can become part of growing up. Every milestone comes with an empty space. School years, birthdays, graduations, weddings. Their own children may be asking about a grandfather they never got to meet. That is the long aftermath of a disappearance. It does not stay frozen in the week someone vanishes. It moves forward with the family. Robert was 27 years old, and that is young, painfully young. Young enough that so much life should have still been ahead of him. He should have had more than one newspaper article. He should have had more years with Carol, more time with Shelly and Kristy, more winters fixing engines, more spring trips north, more ordinary days washing the car before work. But instead, the record we have stops at the vanishing point. When a person's public story stops there, the work becomes remembering that they were never just the vanishing point. Robert was the man in the family photo, the husband standing beside Carol, the father with 2 little girls, the son described as happy-go-lucky, the worker expected on shift, the mechanic who tinkered, the mason and shriner who helped, the man who had plans for spring. And then he was gone.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's heartbreaking because everything you just listed makes him feel so present, like no reason to leave, no reason to walk out. So obviously something happened. He had such a full place in people's lives. Something nefarious happened, and we have no details about any of that.
Right, and the one thing that's really sitting with me, and there's just nothing out there, he went with a friend. There's no details.
Yeah, and who was this friend? And how come we don't have his account?
Right. Where did he go? Did they talk to him? There were 2 people. What?
Yeah.
What in the hell?
Just doesn't make sense. They just that's it. They just didn't care that this guy disappeared, and they left this poor woman and family with so many questions. Where was the assistance here?
Right. They were all trying to make sense of a disappearance that seemed to contradict the man they knew.
Seems like they were just left with, well, he's an adult and he just left somewhere. It seems like that's what the cops kind of washed their hands with.
Yeah.
And that's why his family is just trying to make sense out of where the car was parked doesn't make sense. That's their only thing to let them know that something is awry, when the whole thing is there's no other reason for him not to be there.
Right.
So something happened.
Right.
Look for what happened.
Right.
I can imagine Carol's like, hello, is anyone going to tell me something I don't know?
I know. I would be pounding on this friend's door.
Yeah.
Give me some details. It's bonkers.
And if anything, immediately thinking that the friend had something to do with the nefariousness. Hello.
Right.
Just doesn't make sense.
Right. Now, they had enough information to know something was wrong, but not enough information to know what happened. Was Robert the person who moved the car, or did someone else move it? Or where's that friend? The article just doesn't give us any more information. It doesn't say whether the car was locked, if the keys were inside, were there signs of a struggle, whether police processed the vehicle for evidence, if anyone saw Robert get into the car after leaving the store. It simply tells us that the car was not where Carol expected it to be, and not where employees had last seen it. That's not proof of anything. All that's left is a bunch of questions without answers.
Yeah, and even more frustration, because you can obviously feel how important the car is, because it's the only thing. It's the only thing left.
Right.
Because everything else looks hunky-dory, right?
Right.
So it's the only thing out of place, but we don't have any details that you would want otherwise.
Right? So frustrating. And that is the human damage of an unanswered disappearance. It is not only the moment someone vanishes, it is every day after. Every day the family wakes up and still has no idea where he went. Every day they wonder if today will be the day someone calls. Every day they must decide how much hope they can survive.
That's the devastating part of this. It's a heartbreaking way to put it, because hope is supposed to help. Hope is supposed to be Hello, it's in the word, hopeful. But in this case, it's like hope was hurting the family because it almost seemed like there were no other questions being asked. Like the only people asking the questions were the family. It doesn't seem like cops were asking any questions.
It certainly doesn't feel that way.
The hope was just hurting them.
Yeah. And that hope is getting complicated. Hope keeps people searching, keeps them alive, keeps families from feeling like the world has moved on. But hope also keeps the wound wide open. Every possibility stays alive. Maybe he's out there. Maybe someone saw something. Maybe police missed something. Maybe someone who was quiet could speak now. Maybe one detail, one memory, one overlooked piece of information could change everything. And that is why these old newspaper articles matter. Because even when they are incomplete, they preserve the first shape of the mystery, the names, places, and the timeline. Something about Robert Wood's disappearance alarmed the people who knew him best. And almost 50 years later, those details are still unresolved. We do not know whether there was an accident, confrontation, foul play, a voluntary departure, or another explanation that never reached the public. We do not know what private pain his family carried in all these years, and unless additional records or family information surface, we may not know what answers, if any, were ever found.
That's bonkers. And it is over 50. It's 52 years to be exact. We may not be able to solve every story, but we can refuse to let someone be reduced to one clipping.
Exactly. And Robert Woods was a young man from Bay City. He was a husband, father, a son. Bay City was left with another story that deserves to be remembered. They are close enough that many still remember the era, the streets, the businesses, the weather, the way the city felt. But they are far enough away that records become harder to locate. Witnesses pass away, memories blur, and the people most directly affected may have spent decades carrying something the rest of the world barely knew about. That is why local submissions matter so much. They are not just tips, they are acts of memory. Our anonymous listener in Bay City did not have to send this to us. They did not have to say, hey, here's another life. Here is another family. Here is another name. But they did. And because of that, Robert Woods is being spoken about again. Not as entertainment, not as a solved case we can wrap in a bow, but as a Michigan man whose story still matters. And maybe that is the responsibility of a show like Malice. Not only to tell the stories with endings, but to sit with the stories that still have an open air around them.
Telling the truth also means being honest about what we cannot know. But telling these stories is also important because it makes us all sit with, why would we not do more? Why would we have not chased this down a little bit? Talk to the friend. I don't know. Spread out the search and question people to see if they saw anything suspicious. But of course, starting with the friend. Anyway, stories like this make us all frustrated enough to not let something like this happen again.
Right. And honesty means we leave room for the unknown without letting the unknown erase who he was. So tonight, we say his name, Robert A. Woods. Last seen at 27 years old. A husband, a father, a son, a Bay City man. Last publicly reported as missing after leaving home to wash his car before work. And remembered now because someone in his community believed he should be. And if you are listening with a missing loved one on your heart, please know this. Your person is not forgotten just because the world moved on. Their name matters. Their story matters. And the question you carry matter.
For missing persons in Michigan, you can contact the Michigan State Police Missing Persons Coordination Unit or your local law enforcement agency. You can also search or submit information through NamUs, NamUs, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System.
And before we go, if you enjoyed this episode, please follow and subscribe to Malice and the Mitten wherever you listen. It helps more people discover Michigan's forgotten stories, and it helps us keep saying the names that deserve to be remembered. I'm Tracy Preston.
And I'm Christine Mulligan.
And this is Malice in the Mitten,
where the story matters,
but the truth matters more.
Hit those buttons, smash them all, give us all the stars, like, subscribe, and follow us anywhere you listen to podcasts.
We appreciate it. So have a great week, everyone, and we will see you all back on Wednesday for Round Robin.
Bye.
Bye.